first thing you have to do when you have a problem is admit it, to breathe life into it by forming it into words. So that's what I'm going to do today. I have a problem buying recommendations from Steve Donoghu. I admitted it. There. It's done. I would like to say that I haven't bought a Steve Donoghu recommended book in a while, but that's not true. Actually, before I show you this haul, there was a haul that recently went up on my channel, not that long ago, with Steve Donoghu recommended books. It's an issue. If you don't know who Steve Donoghu is, he is a book critic, a working book critic for the Christian Science Monitor, among other publications. He has been a book critic for as long as I have been alive. That, he jokingly admits that. For the youngsters on BookTube, and I'm counting myself as a youngster on BookTube, that he said that he has been writing reviews for longer than we've been alive. He's read 40,000 books in his lifetime, and he has a knack. He has a good knack for picking out very, very readable texts. So earlier this year, from his Steve Donoghu Steve Reads blog, he has a blog that's called Steve Reads, and he also contributes to a blog called Open Letters Review. And on either one of those websites, he puts up his end of the year lists. His best of 2020 or best of 2021. And it's the new releases. It's the best books published in that year. And you would think that he would only keep up with 1 or 2 or even 3 genres. No, the man keeps up with 15 or 16 genres. He has read over 1,000 books this year. Why do I know so much about Steve Donoghu? And so, when in December, I was perusing the internet. I say that I was perusing the internet. If perusing is obsessively stalking someone's website for several days in a row, if that's what perusing is, then I'm using the term correctly. I think what I meant to say was that I was obsessively stalking Steve Donoghu's websites for these lists to come out. Don't let past Shelly fool you. Back to the video. It dawned on me. It didn't dawn on you. You were checking the website daily. Okay, no more interruptions. That his end of the year book lists came up with the best books published on his Steve Reads website. So of course, being the addict that I was, I gave into my addiction and I started reading these blog posts about the best books of 2020. The best books of 2021, you mean? And I was like, he's done it again. I'm interested in all of them, at least all of the best ones. I had to know. And so, as a little Christmas gift to myself, I bought a handful of new releases, new as in they were published in 2021, and they're all Steve recommended books, and they are all his number one book for that category, that genre. Okay, so that's what this video is. I'm going to be telling you all of the books that I picked up because of Steve. Oh, and some classics. And some classics because I bought those recently. Oh, someone's here. One moment. Can we just talk about this sweatshirt really quick? I thought my mom gave it to me and she said that she didn't, so now I don't know who this is from. But it is the Vacation Reading, and it's at your public library on the bottom. And I really, really like this kind of like oversized sweatshirt. So I'm going to talk about the 4 books that I bought based on Steve's recommendation, Steve Donoghu's recommendation. I have a couple of Christmas gifts that I want to show you, just 2. And then I picked up a couple of books for upcoming reads at Barnes & Noble. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So it's going to be like Steve Donoghu picks, and then classics, basically. And classics is kind of a loose term. Okay, let's start with the best of nature writing. So the best of nature writing is Catherine Raven's Fox and I, An Uncommon Friendship. I had saw Steve actually talk about this on his channel, and he talked about how much he liked it. And so I was surprised when I found out that this was his #1 book for nature writing. It is about a woman who more or less gets fed up with her life and decides to live in solitude. And then while she's living by herself in a more rural area, she befriends, as much as you can befriend a wild animal, she befriends a fox. And it's her memoir of this period in her life, living in solitude and befriending a fox. I love nature writing, I like memoirs, and so this just seemed right up my alley. Part of my brief, part of the thing that I wanted to include as I was shopping with Steve's picks in mind, new releases and that kind of thing, was that I was really looking for books written by women about women. So, you know, more feminist leaning literature. And so that came and brought me to his #1 biography pick, Steve's #1 biography pick, which was The Life She Wished to Live. And this is the biography of Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, who is the author of The Yearling, which I haven't read, but I'm planning to read it alongside this biography. And it's written by Anne McCutcheon. So this looked really good. Actually, I was surprised. I went to Barnes & Noble today, and they had copies of this out on display, so it's not obscure choice on Steve's part. It was released, and obviously those who like biographies probably pick this up. But as somebody who doesn't read a ton of biographies, though I did finish one recently that I really, really loved, Catherine the Great by Robert K. Massey. I really love that. And so because I had such a great biography reading experience with Catherine the Great, I wanted to pick up more biographies. And I thought, why not start with a well-written one, according to Steve Donoghu, a modern one, published in 2021, about a female author, you know, Marjorie Rawlings, written by a female. So I'm really proud of this choice. I'm excited about this choice. And Steve, I hope you don't steer me wrong. You know that whole brief about feminist-leaning literature? These last 2 books have nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that brief. All right, 2 others. His #1 fiction pick and his #1 nonfiction pick were a little bit unusual. And he even said that. And his best of fiction pick is a graphic novel, In by Will McPhail. And interestingly, I've searched my library's catalog for In many times because I heard Gina Stanier talk about this. I heard Steve talk about this. It showed up on other people's channels, and I was like, great, I would love to borrow this from my library and read it and give it back. No, it never showed up. My library never bought it, at least when I last checked a couple weeks ago. They had still not bought it. And so I was like, okay, I'm putting this in my haul. And I think that this really tackles the ideas of isolation and social anxiety, but it's done in a graphic memoir form. And so it lends itself a little bit differently to talk about that subject because of the visual imagery. So I'm really excited to get to this one. Okay, my last pick is the weirdest one. It was Steve's pick for nonfiction, also a graphic novel. And I knew I wanted to get Steve's #1 nonfiction pick because I trust his judgment on nonfiction, and it is really outside of my comfort zone, and I'll talk to you about, well, you'll know right away as soon as I talk about it. And it said, did you hear what Ed Gain done? Did you hear what Eddie Gain done? And it's by Harold, man, I should have practiced this. Harold Schutzer and Eric Powell. I'm so sorry that I butchered some names. And Eddie Gain is a serial killer and one of the most brutal of his type. Now, if anyone knows me, or if you're getting the vibe from my personality, you're like, Shelly, that's not what you read. That is true, but about twice a year I can handle something kind of gruesome or gritty. A few years ago, not too long ago, I watched the documentary, what is it? I'll Be There in the Dark, or I'll Be Gone in the Dark. And it was about the Golden State Killer, who was a rapist living in Sacramento during my childhood, actually. And I lived very close to Sacramento growing up. And there were victims of his assault, and there were victims that were from my hometown and actually not far from where I lived. So I thought that was a really interesting documentary. It was really all about the serial killer and who he actually was as a person. And it gave me nightmares for weeks, but I was appreciative of watching it and learning about that aspect of humanity and human life. And it was done in a very humane and empathizing way. The series was an HBO series. And then, let's see, earlier this year, I read William Faulkner's, Sanctuary, which was also pretty gritty and gruesome and not very edifying at all, but that's okay. So about twice a year, I can kind of stomach something a little more gritty, a little more true crimey, and this will be what I read as my next like gritty read. So we're done with Steve's picks. Now we're gonna just talk about the classics that I bought. So while I was making this order for the books, Steve's recommendations, I decided to put in my cart a couple of less expensive items, if I'm being honest, that I had on my wish list, and I thought, why not? I'll just get them. The first one is Edith Wharton's Ethan Frome, which everyone has said they've really loved, besides Hannah from Hannah's books. Hannah's 17-year-old self didn't like this book, and she could articulate why. But besides 17-year-old Hannah, everybody else seems to really love this book, and it's a slim, about 100-page novella, and I've been wanting to, learn more about Edith Wharton and her style, and so I said, why not? I'll just pick this one up. AJ Dunn. AJ Dunn, you probably didn't watch this video. Where the Red Fern Grows. This is AJ's favorite book of all time, favorite children's book, the book that made an impact on them when they were a child. And Where the Red Fern Grows by Wilson Rowles. I've watched the movie. I know what this book is about. A boy and his two dogs and their life together. And I know the story that it tells. It's super heartbreaking, but to my recollection, I've never read the book. So I want to read it, also because it's AJ's favorite. Let's get into some of the gifts. I know this is not a very organized haul, but it's all right. The first one is still in its packaging. I actually have to call, these two books are from my father-in-law. My father-in-law loves to send myself and my boys, my husband, art books or books that he's picked up through his shopping adventures here and there and everywhere. So we get a box from my father-in-law about every 2 months with goodies inside. And so, he put together a Christmas box for us. And inside for me, there was a Louise Eldritch, the Bingo Palace. And this is actually a note inside, and it says press copy. A press copy with its own little sleeve and everything of a Louise Eldritch book, which I'm excited about because I've never read Louise Eldritch. This next one is still in its little protective paper. It is a Ray Bradbury book, and it's signed by Ray Bradbury. Looks like it has cats on the cover. And it is Death Has Lost Its Charm on Me. This is very much something my father-in-law would send because he loves to buy signed books. And I'm not going to worry about this cover right now. I will put it back in its nice little binding. Okay, the last three have to do with upcoming reads, all classics, so on and so forth. And the first one is The Odyssey by Fitzgerald, translated by Fitzgerald, which was the translator that I preferred. Found this at Barnes & Noble today, and I was like, yes, yes, because I'm reading The Odyssey with my book club, mine and David's book club. I'll leave all the information down below. And I was just really thrilled that I didn't have to order it offline or anything, and I could just pick it up at Barnes & Noble, and it's the translation I wanted and in the style that I wanted, so soft cover. Very excited about that. The next one is one that I'm reading with my Wolf Hall Thomas Cromwell reading group that I've talked about a bunch, and it's The Mirror and the Light by Hilary Mantel. This is the third book in the Thomas Cromwell series, and so we're just, you know, gonna pick it up and read it for over the next couple months. Ooh, one moment. Nap time is always slightly weird around here. I always think it's gonna go seamlessly, and it never does. Except for with Harry, because he's an angel and perfect and amazing. But when you're dealing with 3 and 5-year-olds, they don't want to nap. Okay, so last book. Last book is War and Peace, and it's in this Penguin cloth hardback cloth-bound edition. And I have an edition of War and Peace. It's right here. Buckle up, y'all. I go on about translations for like 2 solid minutes. This is my other edition of War and Peace. And when I bought this, and I talked all about it on my channel, there was a lot of comments about the translator. Tons of people were like, okay, if you're not getting along with this edition, try a different translation. And then I was able to talk to other people kind of on the back end of BookTube, and they kept on reiterating over and over again. The Anthony Briggs translation is the most readable, the most warm to modern readers, and so I was like, okay. So I saw this, and then Barnes & Noble was having a 50% off hardbacks, including all of their classics. There wasn't a ton that I wanted. Most of them actually I owned. There was a lot of Jane Austen there, and I own quite a bit of Jane Austen, and I wasn't seeking to just fill out my Jane Austen collection. So I was kind of digging through their hardcover books throughout the store. I found this one, and I debated on getting it, but the thing that clinched it for me was that it is in the translation that I wanted. And after going through my journey with the Iliad, if you don't know, I just finished reading the Iliad, and the first week or so, I really struggled finding a translation that I liked in order to understand the narrative enough to get into it and then to enjoy it. And so I know I've recently, like, very freshly experienced the agony or the journey that it takes in order to try a bunch of different translations, because oftentimes, at least for me, when I was going through it with the Iliad, I wouldn't know until I was a couple of chapters in, or for the Iliad it would have been books, and here I am about 50 pages in, and I'm like, what? This is not working for me. And then I would try a different translation, and I would read about 50 pages, and again I would be like, this isn't working for me. So I wanted to have these 2 translations on hand, so that way right before I read War and Peace, about that week before, I'm going to start digging around and seeing how much I like both translations, and then I have something to compare them to, so that'll be good. But that is it. I'm not going to do a Steve stack, I don't think. But that's it. So thank you so much for watching. Oh, wait, no, I'm not gonna, don't sign off yet. I have a question for y'all. Like, did you get any books recently? Any Christmas books? Did you get sucked into Steve Donohue's end of the year list? Did anybody gift you books? I know that the Steve Donoghue books were like little Christmas gifts to myself, because I never, let me reiterate that, I never buy brand new release books. I mean, I just never do that. So this was quite the treat for me. And I cannot wait to dive in. I am excited to see what I think about these books. And yeah, that's it. So that's it for me. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. And I will see you all in my next one. Bye, guys.